embark on the Great Canadian Farm Tour, it is important to acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of Indigenous peoples. Agriculture in the Classroom Canada recognizes and honors the enduring presence of the diverse Indigenous communities across Canada, including the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. We acknowledge the deep connection that Indigenous peoples have to the land, waters, resources, and all of agriculture. We express our gratitude for their stewardship and custodianship of these lands for generations. Agriculture in the Classroom Canada recognizes that acknowledging the traditional territories we reside and work on is only a small step towards reconciliation. We ask that we all continue to learn more about the Indigenous peoples in these regions, to consider the history and ongoing colonialism on this land, to reflect on how each of us can contribute to reconciliation. Hello, bonjour. Welcome everyone to our next stop on Season 5 of the Great Canadian Farm Tour. Bienvenue à tous à notre prochain arrêt de la saison 5 de la Grande Tournée des Fermes Canadiens. We are so excited to have everyone join us today from across Canada. Nous sommes ravis que vous soyez tous là aujourd'hui, venus de partout au Canada. My name is Mercedes from Agriculture in the Classroom Canada, and I'll be your MC for today. Je m'appelle Mercedes de Agriculture en Classe Canada, and je serai votre maître de cérémonie aujourd'hui. Before we get started, we just wanted to provide a few reminders. For those who want to follow along in French, please use the Boostlingo link provided in the chat to access the interpreting services provided for today. We ask that everyone is mindful that this is an educational event, so inappropriate conduct happening in the chat, such as spamming and improper comments, will not be tolerated. Throughout the tour, we welcome you to post your questions in the chat to get them answered. We'll answer as many questions as possible. The mystery word for your student activity books will appear at the end of this episode, so please stick around to see it. Students, fun learning will be happening that can be written in your student activity books, which will be shared during the brain break. Finally, we'd love to know where everyone is joining us from today, so please share your location. Now, we would like to welcome Mallory, our next tour host of the Great Canadian Farm Tour. So Mallory Kaiser is from the Goat Patch in Saddle Hills County, Alberta. Mallory, it's great to have you today.
Great to be here.
So Mallory, before I hand over controls, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. My name is Mallory Kaiser. Obviously, I'm a goat producer here in northwestern Alberta. I live about 6 hours northwest of Edmonton. I was looking at all the different farms you guys have been visiting on this tour, and I'm actually the furthest north livestock producer on your guys' tour, so that's pretty exciting and pretty valuable. And I'm also the president of the Alberta Goat Association, and I also sit as the vice chair on the Canadian National Goat Federation. So I'm really involved in the goat industry right from the start of when baby goats are born to the end of their life cycle, but all the other industries involved. So we have dairy, meat, fiber, and vegetation control and recreation. So that'll be a question later on for you guys to see if you can remember all those different industries. So you're welcome to my farm. In the background here, you'll probably see one cow and 3 or 4 dogs running around too. So, and a bunch of goats. So we'll get back to that in a bit.
Thanks for sharing so much about what you do. You do so much, Mallory, and we appreciate everything. Now, what will happen next is I will take a quick leave and hand over controls to Mallory so she can start the tour of her amazing farm. And then I'll come back periodically to share some of the questions being asked by students from across Canada. So we're going to get started, and we'll see you in a little bit. So get started, Mallory.
Perfect. So yes, welcome to my farm. It is a cool sunny morning here in Saddle Hills County here. And as you can see here in a bit of the background, I'll move a bit of the way here, is my goat farm. So this is just a small bit of the does that I have. These are a small group of 19 does that are in with my buck back here named Hudson. He's got the great big horns there. He's 7 years old, so he's kind of at the end of his, definitely in his prime for sure. And we have got some young does and some older does here in this group. And some of them are a little more shy, and some of them are much more friendlier. So I raise a breed called Kiko, K-I-K-O, and they're a breed that was established in New Zealand. When people were coming to colonize the the island of New Zealand, the country of New Zealand, they brought their goats from all over the world. And with that, they ended up becoming very feral. And so in the 1980s, some producers got together and rounded up all the Kiko goats and kept the ones that had the best traits, so the best feet, the best mothering skills, that had the best teat structure and parasite resistance, and just all the best traits that you would want in a goat. And the bonus that they got to come with, these great big long horns that you see on a lot of them, especially on my big guy Hudson over here. He's got the biggest set of horns here on the farm. And so then those goats came over into the US and then into Canada. And that's kind of how most goats came to Canada themselves, is from other countries. So Kiko is known as a meat goat, but they do have a really good meat structure and a dairy structure too. They can provide a lot of milk to a lot of babies. So I guess a question for you guys during the commercial break, so that you guys can, your teacher can ask you guys in the classroom, is how many teats does a goat have? So we kind of know that cows usually have 4. So do goats have 2 or 4? What is their structure supposed to be? So they're here, and as you can see, it's quite wintry in my yard.
Just to interrupt you for a second, Mallory,
yeah.
I have some
Yes.
some of our very first questions as students are pondering how many teats they have. So this is questions being asked by Ivana. Can goats swim? And I'm very curious about this.
Goats, because they are a prey animal, would prefer to stay out of water as much as possible, because goats come from countries where there's often gators in waters. They have that instinct to try to stay out of it, but they can swim if they are really forced to. They can do it. Great question. So yeah, and then obviously certain breeds come with certain colors. With the Kikos here, they're a mostly white breed, so that's why you see a lot of mine, or some people kind of say they're a little boring looking, but they're mostly white. In some cultures, they don't like that very much when it comes to their meat production, but that is just how it is. So I try to have a little more color, and as you can see, a little more splash of it for a little bit more fun in there. And as you see in the background here, we have some hay for the wintertime for the goats, and we'll also be part of their feed regimen here at the goat patch is they'll be getting different types of mineral and hay and different types of grain as well. Here's another question for you guys during the break to think about too. Are goats browsers or are they grazers? So browsers are animals that eat up, and grazers are animals that eat the grass and eat down. So which one do you think goats are? For obviously we're in the fall and winter time here, we're obviously eating hay, but during the summertime we have a different plan and mode of what they're doing. And because we live in a colder climate here, these are the shelters that we're using to keep them warm and dry in the wintertime. And even last night here we had freezing rain. So it's a nice four-sided shelter. And we have a bunch of straw in the center there to keep them nice and warm and dry. And then if it gets really, really cold, to like -40, we have a big barn in the background there. You'll see that white and blue one where they can, we can move them into there if it gets cold enough. And as I move over here, I have my group of my little dolings.
As you're moving, Mallory, yes. I have a question, and this was related to you talking about their colors. Brooke would like to know, do goats change color as they age? So do they come out as brown and they stay brown, or do maybe they gray as they get older?
They actually change on their face, much like our cats and dogs, or as they get older, their faces will, and other livestock, they'll gain some white on them. But it's been kind of tricky sometimes, especially when they're born, they're very wet. And it's hard to, you're doing your best to see what color they are, but I have some does here that will change color from the seasons. They'll either, as they get into the winter time here, they'll turn a darker color. Hey, ducky. And so coming up here is our little bottle baby from this year. Her name is Ducky. Come here, duckies.
As we're looking at Ducky, and she is very cute, Mason is wondering, how old is the oldest goat on your farm?
The oldest goat on my farm right now is 9 years old. Hey, hi, Ducky. Ducky was born this spring on April 8th. She had a younger brother and sister, and their names were Brown Knee, because he was white at the time, and he had one brown knee. And then as he got older, actually, he turned quite gray on his face. So we were kind of surprised when we went to go look for him later on that he looked a lot different. And then she also had a sister that my son named Scout. So yeah, and so we decided to keep Ducky here. I know she doesn't look like a duck, and it kind of confuses a lot of people, but Ducky, as in we took the name from Land Before Time. So
I love that movie. And going along, as you're talking about the life cycle of your goats, how long does it take for them to become full size? So when they're get into past their teenage and they're considered an adult.
So there is a life cycle. So obviously she is Ducky here is underneath the age of 1 year old. So she is considered a doeling, is what a female goat is called. That is still underneath a year old. And then a male goat that's underneath a year old is called a buckling. And then if you ended up, sometimes people will castrate their male goats, and then they will be called a wether. Just like with cattle, you would have, that would be called a steer in comparison. So, and it's the same terminology for sheep as well, for a wether as well. And so Ducky here, she is considered a doeling. And then once they're over a year old, and Ducky will take over the live stream for you guys, they'll be called a doe as an adult, and then buck as they become a year old as well. And I don't know if Ducky will be present enough, but if you can tell a goat's age is by their teeth. Here, she smiles. Depending on the size of their teeth here on the bottom, and as you can see here, she doesn't have teeth on the top. So goats and sheep don't have any top teeth. They only have bottom teeth in the front. They also have molars in the back for chewing up grasses and hay, but their bottom teeth will tell you how old they are. She's got two big ones in the front here. It's the smaller ones on the side, so it's telling me that she's still pretty little. And goats, I think Ducky will show me, are cloven hooved. They've got two claws on them. And obviously, even though Ducky's a girl, she still has horns. Most goat breeds will have horns. And there's some goat breeds, the Toggenburgs, that don't have ears. They do have ears. They still could hear, but they're just little nubs. So they can't have tags in their ears. So, and I guess another question for you guys is you can see she's chewing on something, but there's nothing in front of her. So what she's doing is, goats are ruminants, much like cows and sheep. And so she's got 4 stomachs. So as she eats something and it comes down, it goes through her different stomach chambers and it'll come back up so she can chew it, so she can get down to the next level here. Oh yeah, Ducky, you're all about the camera work here, hey? So yes, that is, and then also goats are pregnant for 5 months. So right now, that herd that I had showed you earlier, there's a buck in there. He's been in there since November 8th. So I'm hoping to have some babies here in around April 8th.
And that's a great segue question. Is Indy would like to know how many babies goats typically have in their lifetime. So this was a great question to segue into.
So depending on the breed, because I raise Kikos and they have, your bum's itchy, hey? Can I help you? Is that since Kikos have higher milk production than some other meat breeds, but typically you want to be having your goats to be having 2 babies. Now, there's another question for you guys. I said it earlier, but what is a baby goat called in general? Right? So you have puppies or a pup for dogs. You have kittens for cats. What would a baby goat be called? But yes, you want to typically have 2 babies per doe. I've had up to 5 babies. Last year I had 5 babies from one doe and they all lived. It was really exciting. It was too much for that mom, actually. And then to see this cute little black and white one right here, she was a part of quads this year. So I typically with the Kikos, because I feed, oh sorry, you want to be back on camera. Because I feed really well, I kind of sometimes end up with a lot of quads. So sometimes depending on the mom and their milk production, they can only handle feeding 3 tops. And so some people, they'll make sure that their goats can handle 2 and feed and kind of take the best ones, or select it by the gender of the goat kind of thing. But I try to keep everybody on their moms, and I kind of watch if anybody needs a little more supplement. And that was the situation here with Ducky. She got to stay with her mom, but she just needed a little bit of a bottle. Hey, Ducky. Yeah, you like cuddling.
It's so great to learn more about your goats. We're going to do one more question before we go into our commercial break. And this question is from Weston. And Weston wants to know if goat horns fall off.
It's a great question. So there's a difference between antlers and horns on animals. So obviously, goats have horns, so they don't come off. They are on her head. We don't want them to come off. There's always have blood supplies going through them, and they're always growing. Now, if you look at wildlife like elk and deer and caribou, those kind of animals have antlers. So they grow and will have blood supply through them, but as they get to fall, they'll harden, lose their blood supply, and they fall off and they'll shed. So they are always on. Sometimes they break, especially as they get towards the end. On my big buck, Hudson there, I don't know if you guys noticed, part of his horn was broken off because as they grow out, the blood supply kind of slows down there. And he was fighting with somebody else and he broke it off. But yes, so they do break their horn. There will be blood coming out of there. So we want to try to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Wonderful. And those were some great questions we've received so far. We're now going to take a brief brain break, a commercial break, so that Mallory can just move along through her farm and get ready for the next part. And we're going to learn a little bit more about the province of Alberta. So we'll be back shortly with everyone. So we'll see you in a few minutes. Hello, we are back with Mallory, who's going to be sharing more about her farm operation with goats. But before we jump into it, I just want to share a couple of responses to some of the great questions Mallory has been challenging you with. So one of the first questions was, how many teats do goats have? And the response coming in from Deidre is they have 2. So Mallory, can you let us know what's the correct answer for that one?
The answer is 2. Now they can have different teat structures, but mostly they have 2 quadrants in their bags. So so if they have more than 2 kids, that can make it pretty difficult sometimes to feed them. So that's why you have to kind of be cautious of that depending on the breed you have.
Now, Mallory, another one of your questions was, are they grazers? And let me know what was the other option again.
Grazers or foragers.
Foragers. And we have a couple answers there from Miss Thorson's class. She said grazers. Another option coming in from Sander, grazers. So what is the actual answer, Mallory?
That there are foragers that eat up. So compared to other livestock animals, goats eat up. So they want to be eating trees and woodier plants like willows and thistles and weeds. So that's why goats are great for vegetation control, is because their digestive system will break down the seeds that are in like a thistle plant, and it'll break it down so when they poop, that there's less weed seeds that are left over compared to other livestock where they'll leave more on the ground for it to spread. So goats are great for that, and they love eating it. They'll eat the whole thing right down. Same thing with willows and trees. They're really good for those vegetation controls. And right here I have with me, I'm sure everybody's wanting this is Nova. She's a 6-month-old puppy.
Oh, that's so adorable.
And I have Max here too.
It's great to see the diversity of animals you have on your farm. And then last question you challenged everybody with, Mallory, was, what's the name of a baby goat called? And here are some of the responses coming in. Are the babies called a Kid from Heidi, Kid from Megan, Kid from Elkie? So what's the correct answer to that one?
That is correct. The answer is Kid. And how they've gotten and established that name, especially when they're babies, once they get about a week, 2 weeks old, they are very, very bouncy. We have, over here, you'll kind of see in the background, those round, brownish cylinder things. Those are some concrete culverts that we have. And we'll set them up and put boards across them and up and down them. And the baby goats are jumping across them in the springtime, keeping themselves busy, and also helps keeps their hoofs worn down too, so that they don't get too long on them. So yeah, they jump around like all you silly kids at school there.
Thank you, everyone, for responding. Now, Mallory, feel free to continue sharing the tour of your goat farm, and we'll be back with more questions.
Yes. Perfect. So since I have them here, this is Nova. She's 6-month-old Kangal Cross. And this is Maximus. He's 5 years old, and he's also a Kangal Cross. And you'll kind of see that on his neck there. He's got a collar with some spikes on it. And Max and Nova's job, and I have another dog, Sophie, around here somewhere, is to keep the herd safe. Where I live up in northern Alberta, we have all sorts of predators. We've got coyotes, black bears, grizzly bears, wolves, you name it, and even some birds. Nova wants to show you her tummy. And so those collars on there is to help protect their neck and give them a little bit of defense from those. And I recently lost a dog, so that's why it wasn't to wildlife or anything. It was to an accident on the farm. But that's why we've got little, well, she's not even that little, but little Nova here. So the next group I'm going to bring you over to is another breeding group I have. If Nova will let me get up. If I can get up safely off the ground from the ice. So in Canada, because we are a colder climate, well, we do still have a dairy industry. So one of the industries that we do for the dairy is goat dairy can be made to make cheeses, milk, lotions, and what else is there? Cheese, lotions, and some different types of cream and beauty products. So that is, Nova really wants to be in camera here. She's much more cuter to look at than me, right? And so over in Ontario, actually, Ontario produces the most of Canada's for Eastern Canada's milk there. They produce so much goat milk that we actually export it to the United States. So I've been part of talks this year when there's been some conflict between the two countries about how do we manage the goat supply. And in Western Canada, we have enough goat dairy to supply most of Western Canada that we don't have very much to sell to the United States. And so when it comes to, eventually animals have to come to the end of their life cycle. So in Canada, we actually don't have enough goat meat. Even with all the different industries, we don't have enough to meet the demand. So one of the things that we end up actually having to do in Canada is we import our goat meat from Australia and New Zealand. And us goat producers aren't super happy about that. Sorry, I'm just trying to get to another pen here. And so right now, about 82% of our goat meat is imported from those two countries, and we're trying to do our best to raise more goats and be able to meet the demand in Canada. So it's a great industry to be in because there's such a high demand for it. So another industry that we have here in Canada is the fiber industry. I'm trying to find, so I got some of my fences here. So goats, you guys have probably heard in the fashion industry, if you have some high-end clothing, is cashmere fiber. Like a cashmere sweater, cashmere scarf, or anything of that nature. That actually comes from goats. Goats, in their undercoat, as it gets to wintertime, they grow this really nice thick fur to help them stay warm and dry. And so there's certain breeds that produce a whole bunch of really thick cashmere, and there's breeders that will go with a comb in the springtime and they'll comb it out. And it doesn't matter what the color is of the animal, they will comb it out and then they'll put it into bags and then they sell it. So next time you see cashmere anywhere, that is actually from goats. And another fiber.
Mallory, sorry to interrupt. This actually segues into a great question that Kaylee is wondering if goats sweat. So does their fur cause them to sweat? Do they sweat under normal conditions like we do?
They don't. So much like other animals, we have obviously our skin allows us to sweat. But for goats, when they are trying to stay cool, much like dogs and other animals, they have to try to cool through their horns or through their breathing. So when it's really hot out, sometimes you'll see goats panting, and this is because they're trying to get colder air in to cool down their bodies, but also through their hooves. So I'm making sure in the summertime when it's really hot out that they have access to shade and to cooler water as much as possible, right? So and another fiber that we have, and I don't have these goats, but they're really cool, is mohair. And it's a fleece type of goat and have these really cute, really spirally hairs on them. And they will, they get really long, and it's a really strong woolly fiber. And I'm just trying to get some fiber over here without slipping on the snow and ice. Here, I have some natural cashmere here frozen to my fence. Here we go. So, it doesn't look very appealing right now, but this is what cashmere looks like, and the goats scratch it off every spring. So the mohair, back to that, is often used in making cinches on saddles and other high stress material. With mohair, it doesn't shrink when it's washed like wool does, and it also is a stronger fiber as well. So that's often what you'll see used in cinches and other, like I said, more stress-related products. Because, come here. And this is Mindy, another bottle baby, but she's a lot older. Mindy's saying hi to everybody. Hopefully she doesn't end the stream. But that's another product that we have.
Mallory, you were talking about different breeds of goats
Yeah.
momentarily ago, and
Yes.
Wes wants to know if you have any fainting goats.
I don't have any, and the word for that is called mitonic. I don't have any mitonic goats at all. They are used sometimes in the U.S., but obviously because we have such harsh winter conditions here that I don't want them falling down and getting hurt, especially on the icy conditions like this. And but I don't, unfortunately. But yeah, you often will see that trait in smaller breeds like Nigerian dwarfs. They'll often will have that kind of trait in them, and it's just something that's genetically evolved. The reason that some goats do that and why that's been bred into is it's a strange defense reaction, fight or flight. They think some of them will just kind of pass out and think that because they suddenly died, that predators will leave them alone. And some people use that not very nicely to keep the herd safe. So, no, we don't have that. And this is Mindy here. She's 3 years old. She's one of our bottle babies. She used to ride on my side by side and even in the truck with me if she could.
Mallory, we're coming to the end of our tour. Is there any final things you want to share about your goat farm or anything else you'd like to share with the students joining us from across Canada?
That goat is a really good meat and dish, and also one thing about the goat dairy I wanted to say is that goat dairy has less lactose in it. So if you are finding that you are having stomach problems with trying to digest regular goat milk or regular cattle's dairy milk, that this often is a nice exchange. And also when you come up to anybody's farm or into a petting zoo, always try to make sure you ask to pet first. Hey, Mindy. And yeah, I just really glad that you guys wanted to know about more goats, and there's probably about 22 different breeds of goats in Canada, and we have a really big industry and it's always growing every year, and I'm really excited to be a part of it. So if there's any questions for me, I guess.
Oh, well, we do have a couple more questions, so maybe we'll bring a couple more up and then we'll close things out. So, couple more questions that we'll bring up is specifically, here's one right here. Oh, someone's actually saying thank you, and they're very appreciative that you were able to do this with us today. And then another person is asking, and this is maybe just around purchasing of goat and how that kind of works and price variations. So if you can speak to a little bit about that one.
So compared to cattle, goats, a finished goat is 60 pounds, which doesn't take very much or very long for them to get to that. And you're looking at, I got this year $3.40 a pound, live weight pound, for my meat kids that I had. And obviously the dairy goes different directions too. But that is kind of what you get. And then as those kind of get to the end of their life cycle too, you're looking, some people pay more, and kind of depending where you are in Canada, about $200 to $300 for those older meat animals.
Wonderful. Thanks for explaining a little bit more about that. And then one last question I actually have for you is, how did you become a goat farmer, Mallory? Like, what's the pathway you took to share with students across Canada to see if they want to become one too? How did you do it?
Yeah. So when I was growing up, I grew up with cattle, and actually the land I'm on right now used to have cattle. It used to be a cattle bush here. I grew up with cattle and grain farming. We had 120 head of Black Angus. And then when I moved out to college, my grandfather got sick, and so they sold the herd while I was gone because I just wasn't there, and they knew my education was more important. And when I tried to get back into cattle at the time, the prices of cattle was just astronomical and really high. So my husband at the time, he was kind of a country kid, but not a farm kid. It didn't really know anything about livestock. So I was listening to CBC radio, and they were talking about the goat industry and how it was growing and that they're always looking for more producers. And so, hey, that's something I could probably do. Goats can't be too different than cattle. So I got into it, and then I've really heavily got into it. So I'm really excited to be a part of the goat industry.
And we're so excited to have you a part of today's event. I learned something new today, and I appreciate you sharing all this great information. Before we close off this episode, and thank you everyone for waiting patiently, I'm excited to share the mystery word for today. So the fifth mystery word that would go into your activity books is sink, or évier en français. So thank you again for Mallory for joining us on this episode of the Great Canadian Farm Tour. Our next stop will be on November 25th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time at a sheep farm in Newfoundland in Labrador. So we're going from goat to sheep. And so we look forward to seeing everyone, and we just want to say goodbye for now, and à bientôt.
Thank you,
Bye,
guys. Have
everyone.
yourself a great
Thank
day
you
at
for
school.
joining us.